Welcome back guys. Now in this video let's discuss about digestion in stomach. Okay, so digestion in the stomach. See here I am showing you stomach. Okay, this is the stomach. Here I have taken a small part of the stomach and I am just magnifying it. Okay, I have magnified the stomach. So in this magnification view you can clearly see there are these glands present. Are you able to appreciate these glands? Okay, these glands which are present in the stomach. So these glands are the gastric glands. Okay, these are the gastric glands. Now I am showing you one gastric gland over here. Okay, this is one gastric gland. Important point is, see, this one gastric gland, it contains different types of cells. Okay, now please look at here. These are the cells which are in different color. Here these are the cells which are different color. Now there are different colored cells present. Different colored cells means different types of cells. That's what I mean by. So this one gastric gland, it contains different types of cells. Okay, now different types of cells produce different digestive enzymes. Okay, different digestive enzymes, different hormones. Okay, that's what we'll discuss now. So first of all, see, let's start from here. See, these cells which are present on the surface. Okay, these cells which are present on the surface, these are called as the surface mucous cells. These are the surface mucous cells, and down to it these cells are called as the neck mucous cells. Surface mucous cells and the neck mucous cells. Surface mucous cells and neck mucous cells. Now let's start our topic. Let's see different types of glands and the enzymes which are produced. Now what is the first cell which I have said you? See, it's a surface mucous cell. Write it here, it's missing over there. It's a surface mucous cell. It's a surface mucous cell. Now the surface mucous cell, what is the important point is surface mucous cell, it produces mucus. Important point is the surface mucous cells is also called as, foveolar cell. It's also called as foveolar cell. Surface mucous cell or foveolar cell. Now, yes, after surface mucous cell, there are mucous neck cells present. Now, they also produce mucus, and mucus is a protective lining in the stomach. So, mucus in the stomach is produced by surface mucous cells, which are also called as foveolar cells, as well as the mucous neck cells. Important point about the mucous neck cell is, see, this mucous neck cell is a stem cell. Okay, it acts like a stem cell. So, note here. So, this mucous neck cell, it's a stem cell. Okay, done. Now, after this, let's talk about the parietal cells. Now, these parietal cells which are present in the gastric gland, they are the real cells which produces the acid. Okay, we are talking about the gastric secretions, right? The gastric secretion, HCl, acid. Now, the gastric secretions, acid is produced by the parietal cells. Okay, parietal cells. Now, these parietal cells are going to produce what? Yes, acid, see, gastric acid or HCl. And it also produces intrinsic factor. It produces acid as well as it produces intrinsic factor. Now, what is the importance of this intrinsic factor? Intrinsic factor helps in absorption of vitamin B12. Okay, intrinsic factor helps in absorption of vitamin B12. Okay, now especially vitamin B12 will be absorbed in the terminal ileum, that we will discuss later. But anyway, without intrinsic factor, see, without this intrinsic factor, it's not possible to absorb vitamin B12. It's not possible to absorb vitamin B12. Okay, after parietal cells. Now, let's discuss about the enterochromaffin-like cells. Okay, ECL, enterochromaffin-like cells. Now, this enterochromaffin-like cells, they will produce something called as histamine. So, histamine is coming from the enterochromaffin-like cells. Now, what is this histamine going to do? Now, histamine, it will come and stimulate the parietal cells. So, histamine is a stimulus. Histamine is a stimulus for the parietal cells to release the acid. So, now tell me, parietal cells are stimulated by, histamine. Not only that, from your basics, okay, from your basics in pharmacology, you would have studied, sir, the parasympathetic nervous system, vagus nerve, parasympathetic nervous system releases acetylcholine. Acetylcholine increases the acid production. We know this, right? So, parietal cells can be stimulated by acetylcholine, true. Okay, parietal cells, they can be stimulated by acetylcholine and they will release acid. Not only that, remember, the parietal cells can also be stimulated by histamine. So, histamine receptors, okay, H2 receptors are present on the parietal cells. So, histamine is the stimulus for the acid. Okay, done. Now, let's talk about the chief cells. Chief cells are mainly involved in production of the digestive enzymes. Which digestive enzyme? Chief cells produce something called as a pepsinogen. Later on, this pepsinogen is inactive. This pepsinogen will be converted into pepsin. Pepsin helps in digestion of proteins. Okay, pepsin helps in digestion of proteins. Now, not only that, pepsinogen, even gastric lipase. See, lipase, name it is there, gastric lipase. Gastric means from the stomach. These lipases are getting produced. What it will do? Helps in digestion of fats. So, these chief cells produce digestive enzymes like pepsinogen as well as gastric lipase. Okay. Now, let's talk about the D cells. D cells produce something called as a somatostatin. Remember, for your entire life, somatostatin is something which decreases everything. Somatostatin decreases the growth hormone levels. True. Somatostatin decreases the insulin level. Somatostatin decreases the glucagon. Somatostatin inhibit everything. Somatostatin inhibit the acid. Okay. So, somatostatin inhibit all the secretions. True. So, somatostatin is also is getting produced in the stomach. So, somatostatin is produced from D cells. D cell. Now, let's discuss about the G cells. Okay, in the gastric gland, there are these G cells also present. Now, these G cells produce hormone called as gastrin. Gastrin. Now, what this gastrin will do? Gastrin also stimulates the parietal cells. Gastrin also stimulates the release of acid. So, we know that enterochromaffin-like cells produces the histamine. Histamine stimulates the parietal cells. So, parietal cells produce the acid. Not only that, acetylcholine from the vagus can stimulate the parietal cells. So, these parietal cells can produce the acid. Now, we have just seen the G cells. Now, the G cells will produce a hormone called as gastrin. Now, this gastrin, okay, now this gastrin, it will release or it will stimulate the parietal cells to release acid. So, how many number of stimulus are there? Now, 3 hormones can stimulate these parietal cells. Okay, 3 hormones can stimulate these parietal cells. Remember, these parietal cells are also called as 𝐒𝐻𝐵𝐷 cells. Parietal cells are also called as 𝐒𝐻𝐵𝐷 cells. Now, these parietal cells or 𝐒𝐻𝐵𝐷 cells can be having 3 stimulus. What are they? One is acetylcholine, other one is gastrin and histamine. Gastrin, histamine and acetylcholine are the stimulus for the 𝐒𝐻𝐵𝐷 cells or parietal cells for the production of acid. Okay. So, what we have seen so far? We have seen different types of cells which are present in the gastric mucosa and the different hormones which are getting produced. Now, after this, let's discuss some important pharmacological integration. Now, the cell which I am showing you here, this cell is called as a parietal cell. Okay, this cell is a parietal cell. Now, tell me, this parietal cell, it is having how many stimulus? This parietal cell or 𝐻𝐵𝐷 cell. Now, it is having 3 stimulus. See, there is 1, 2 and 3. 3 receptors are present. Okay. Now, whenever you stimulate these 3 receptors, who is going to be produced? Acid is going to be produced. Now, what are the 3 stimulus? You already know it. See, histamine. Histamine is coming from which cells? Enterochromaffin-like cells. Now, this histamine is going to act on H2 receptor. Okay, sir, well and good. Now, there is this acetylcholine, the parasympathetic neurotransmitter. Now, this acetylcholine is going to act on which receptor? It's a muscarinic receptor, M3 muscarinic receptor. Okay, M3 muscarinic receptor. And one more thing, one more hormone, gastrin. Gastrin is coming from G cells. Now, this gastrin is going to act on which receptor? Gastrin is going to act on cholecystokinin B receptor. Okay, cholecystokinin 2 or cholecystokinin B receptor, all are the same. So, gastrin is going to act on the cholecystokinin B receptor. Okay, remember, gastrin receptor is cholecystokinin B receptor. Even cholecystokinin hormone uses cholecystokinin A receptor. So, gastrin and cholecystokinin, they use the same receptor. That's why we usually put both the receptors under one family. Okay, so gastrin and cholecystokinin are coming under gastrin family. Later we will discuss that. But anyway, here I want you to know one point. So, this gastrin will act on cholecystokinin B receptor. So, these are the 3 stimulus for the parietal cells or 𝐻𝐵𝐷 cells. Now, whenever you stimulate them, out of which powerful stimulus is histamine. The powerful stimulus is the histamine. So, whenever you stimulate, okay, any of this receptor, now these parietal cells, what they will release? They will release the acid with the help of a pump. There is this one pump which is helping in the production of acid or which is helping in the release of acid. What is the name of this pump called as? It is called as proton potassium ATPase. See, it is sending protons. Okay, protons are the acid. Now, once the protons are produced or once are not produced, when the protons are released, now these protons are going to bind with the chloride. Protons are going to bind with the chloride. This H plus is going to bind with the Cl minus here. So, HCl will be formed. So, anyway, the name of this pump is important. It is the proton potassium ATPase. Okay, it's sending the one proton out. For that, it's taking one potassium into the cell. Okay, it's a ATPase. So, proton potassium ATPase. So, in a simple way, we can say acid is coming out. Okay, acid is getting secreted from a proton pump. This is called as a proton pump. Okay, proton pump. Now, why we need to know all these things? Okay, the pharmacological integration. What is the pharmacological integration? Imagine that this one person who is having hyperacid secretion. Imagine that there is this one person who is having ulcers. Ulcers because of over acid in the stomach, over acidity. Okay, he is having over acids are there in his stomach. Now, in order to treat the ulcers, what you have to do as a doctor, you have to decrease the gastric acid production. How can you decrease the gastric acid production? You know it, sir. If you can block the histamine receptor, or if you can block the acetylcholine receptor or the cholecystokinin receptor, if you can block these receptors, automatically stimulation is going to be decreased. When stimulation decreases, automatically acid release will be decreased. Or you can directly block this pump. Okay, you can directly block this proton potassium ATPase, or you can block the proton pump by proton pump inhibitors. See, proton pump inhibitors, what they will do? Proton pump inhibitors, they will come and inhibit the proton potassium ATPase. So acid release will be decreased. Now, my question to you, sir, what are the important drugs which are used to treat, like these peptic ulcers? See, formalic is drug of choice for peptic ulcer disease. Peptic ulcer disease means ulcers in stomach as well as duodenum. Okay, stomach, gastric ulcers and duodenal ulcers are the peptic ulcers, right? They are the peptic ulcers. Now, how you can treat these peptic ulcers? The drug of choice for peptic ulcer is proton pump inhibitors. If you inhibit the proton pump, acid production decreases. The acids are not going to cause any ulcers. Okay, so what are the examples of this proton pump inhibitor? The proton pump inhibitors include omeprazole, rabeprazole, pantoprazole, esomeprazole, all these prazoles. Okay, so omeprazole, pantoprazole, esomeprazole, all these drugs are the proton pump inhibitors, and these proton pump inhibitors are the drug of choice for peptic ulcer disease. Not only for peptic ulcer disease, these proton pump inhibitors are also used in conditions like gastroesophageal reflux disease. So, what is GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease? Reflux of acid from the stomach into the esophagus. When that acid is getting reflux, that causes esophagitis. That even cause Barrett's esophagus. Okay, metaplastic changes that can even lead to adenocarcinoma of the esophagus. This is not something good. We don't want acid reflux. That's not good. Okay, that's not good. We don't want it. So, what we have to do? We have to decrease the acid production. Less acid means less reflux. Simple. Less acid, less reflux. How can you decrease the acid production? By proton pump inhibitors. So, even in GRD, you can use the proton pump inhibitors. Okay, so these are the powerful drugs. Omeprazole, pantoprazole, esomeprazole. These are the powerful drugs. Now, there is one more condition which is called as a Zollinger-Ellison syndrome. Okay, ZDS, Zollinger-Ellison syndrome. Now, what is this Zollinger-Ellison syndrome? We will discuss now. See, this Zollinger-Ellison syndrome also a place where there is more acid secretion. More acid is there that will cause the ulcers. Okay, even Zollinger-Ellison syndrome. Now, we will discuss about that. See, in Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, what is the problem? See, in Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, there are something called as gastrinomas. Okay, there is something called as a gastrinoma. Gastrinoma means gastrin tumors like insulinoma, glauconoma, 𝐕𝐈𝐵oma, okay, something like that. There is something called as a gastrinoma, G cell tumor. Now, what are the G cells are going to produce? Gastrin. So, whenever there is a gastrinoma, there is excessive production of gastrin. What gastrin will do? Gastrin is going to act on parietal cells. Gastrin is overstimulating the parietal cells for the release of acid. So, more acid is there, ulcers will be there. So, in Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, the main problem is the gastric acid hypersecretion due to gastrinoma. Due to gastrinoma, gastric acids are getting overproduced. Okay. Now, this gastrinoma, it is associated with a syndrome called as MEN1 syndrome. Okay, MEN1 syndrome, there is this one syndrome called as MEN1 syndrome, which is also called as multiple endocrine neoplasia type 1. Usually, okay, let me discuss here. If the person is having MEN1 syndrome, he is going to have 3P tumors. Okay, he is going to have 3P tumors. What are these 3P tumors? One is pituitary tumors. Okay, one is pituitary tumors, and other is parathyroid tumors. Parathyroid tumors are going to be there, and other are pancreatic. Okay, pancreatic tumors. So, pituitary, parathyroid and pancreatic tumors are going to be seen in MEN1 syndrome. MEN1 syndrome. One of a pancreatic tumor. See, insulinoma, glauconoma, gastrinoma, okay, 𝐕𝐈𝐵oma. All these are the pancreatic tumors. So, important point which I want you to know is, see, now this Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, these gastrinomas, they are as a part of, they are associated with MEN1 syndrome. Why? Because in MEN1 syndrome, pancreatic tumors are there. One of a pancreatic tumor can be gastrinoma. Okay. Now, see, this tumor is very, very small tumor. This gastrinoma, they are very, very small. Okay. They are very minute tumors. So, it's very hard to localize them. Most of the time, they are present in this one triangular region, which is called as a gastrinoma triangle. Please appreciate here. I have just kept a triangle over here. Okay. Now, this triangle is called as a gastrinoma triangle or Passaro's triangle. Okay. Gastrinoma triangle or Passaro's triangle. In this region somewhere, okay, these gastrinomas are located. Somewhere over here, these gastrinomas are located. Okay. Most of the time, they will be located in this triangle, that too also most commonly in the duodenum part 2. So most of the time these gastrinomas are present in the duodenum part 2, followed by the pancreas. Okay, followed by the pancreas. So somewhere in this region, okay, somewhere in this region you are going to have this gastrinomas. And that too, if you want to identify the tumor, if you want to localize the tumor, it's very hard. Okay, it's such a small tumor. The study to localize the tumor is called as somatostatin receptor scintigraphy. See, most sensitive test for tumor localization. For locating this tumor, you need to do a test which is called as somatostatin receptor scintigraphy. Somatostatin receptor scintigraphy. Why? Because usually these somatostatin receptors are present on the gastrin. Okay, gastrin cells. On the gastrin cells, somatostatin receptors are there. Okay, for example, if you think this is a gastrin cell, G cell. Okay, on this G cell, which receptors are present? Somatostatin receptors are present. Why? For example, now see this somatostatin is coming here. Now somatostatin, what it will do? It will come and sit on the G cells. So what now G cells will do? G cells decrease the gastrin. G cells decrease the gastrin. And when gastrin decreases, automatically acid production decreases. Acid production decreases. Okay, so like that. So somatostatin decreases the acid production. True. Somatostatin receptors are present on the G cells. True. So localizing this somatostatin receptors is called as somatostatin receptor scintigraphy. Okay, somatostatin receptor scintigraphy is the most sensitive investigation for the tumor localization. And what is the investigation of choice? Okay, how to put have a basic idea. Okay, this person is having this gastrinomas or 𝗠𝐨𝐫𝐞𝐢𝐚 syndrome. The investigation of choice is a secretion study. Okay, secretion study. Why secretion study? Why? Because the secretion is considered as a nature's antacid. Okay, it's considered as a nature's antacid. Okay, so acid is HCl. Nature's antacid is secretin. Why? Because the secretin will try to decrease the acid. Okay, secretin, it's a nature's antacid. It's the first hormone discovered in the human. Okay, now the secretin, it all the time anti-acid, decreases the acid. Now, what is happening in this fellow? Now, in our fellow with the 𝗠𝐨𝐫𝐞 syndrome, he is having hyperacid. Over acid is there. In order to suppress this acid, what happened to the blood levels of secretin? The blood levels of secretin is going up. So, secretin study, investigation of choice is secretin study. If I am the person who is having the 𝗠𝐨𝐫𝐞 syndrome, yes, there is gastric acid hypersecretion is there in my stomach. But if you look at the blood levels of this secretin levels will be over elevated. Okay, they will be highly elevated, trying to suppress the gastric acid. Okay, now most sensitive test for tumor localization is somatostatin receptor scintigraphy, already completed. Now what is the treatment? Treatment is very simple. Now the treatment is gastric acid over secretion. So you can either go with the proton pump inhibitors, or also you can use octreotide. Okay, octreotide. What is this octreotide? The octreotide is somatostatin. Octreotide is somatostatin. Yes, we have discussed octreotide, lanreotide, all these are the somatostatin receptor analogs. Now see, whenever you do octreotide will come and bind here. Now what this octreotide will do? Octreotide decreases the gastrin release, decreases the acid production. So, okay, so we have discussed about the proton pump inhibitors. Not only that, either you can block histamine receptors also. H2 receptors are also there. You can decrease the acid production by giving histamine receptor blockers also. Okay, histamine receptor blockers. What are the examples of histamine receptor blockers? Now, the histamine receptor blockers include ranitidine and cimetidine. So, ranitidine and cimetidine, these are the histamine receptor blockers which can be used in the treatment of ulcers. Okay, they will decrease the gastric acid. Okay, guys. Now, so far we have seen what? We have discussed about the gastric glands, different types of cells in the gastric glands, and different types of hormones and enzymes which are getting produced from the gastric glands. Also, we have seen some important pharmacological as well as the pathological integrations. Hope the video is helpful. Thank you.